Ladies, we all walk through hard things. Think about something that's happened in your life or even in the last 6 months, or maybe it was just this morning that was just hard. And sometimes when we walk through that hard stuff, our heart starts to turn hard as well. And sometimes we think we have every right for our heart to turn hard, or for us to get mad at God and question His sovereignty and His grace and His power. And today we're diving into a topic that's called holy suffering. Holy suffering doesn't sound like it's something that belongs in the same sentence. Those are two totally different words, holiness and suffering. So how do we partner those two together? I want to pick up right where Robin left off in our last time together in Romans 8, verse 17. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in His sufferings, in order that we may also share in His glory. Verse 18, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Suffering is hard. Suffering can be anything from getting that really rough diagnosis, walking through a hard season of your life, losing a loved one. There's so many different things that cause this present day suffering inside of us. So how in the world does holiness come in contact with that? What I've learned is that when things go through the fire, they often reveal a lot of our impurities. And so when we go through the fire, a lot of our impurities start to show themselves and can get burned off if we allow ourselves to just be present before Jesus in those hard times. Now, easier said than done, right? I remember being a senior in high school. I woke up one morning and left for school, and when I came home, nothing of our home was standing. Our house had completely burned to the ground. Our family lost everything. And for the next several months, my family would live together in one room of a hotel in my senior year of high school. And it was devastating and it was hard. And I remember that time just being so overwhelmed with the fact that everything that we lost was gone. But I think it was because of the faith that my parents had that kept my perspective in the right place. We watched people come together in our community to love us and support us through that time. And what we didn't even realize was that this was a time for us to shine light on God's glory and His grace. And so in the midst of devastation, we were able to point people back to Jesus, showing them miracle after miracle that God was performing in one of the hardest seasons of our life as a family. Not to mention the blessing that came out of this. Our home was rebuilt. We watched just all these details come together that should have never worked, but only in God's grace and His provision did they work just as they should. And watching blessings of our family coming closer together. There's nothing that draws a family closer together than living in a one-room hotel room for an extended amount of time. I assure you of that. But it bonded our family together. Think about one of those hard times that you've walked through. It's all about perspective. We've talked a lot about that in this journey that we've gone through. Are your eyes on the flesh, or are your eyes on the Spirit? Which one are you looking to get through the day? I mean, what I've learned is when I just keep my mind and my eyes focused on the person of Jesus, it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but it means that the glory of God makes Himself alive and known through those situations. A holiness is produced inside of us when we surrender our situation to Jesus and depend on Him for His strength, instead of making it through those hard moments in the strength of our own. Now, those hard moments can be some that I've named. However, some of those hard moments can also be that hard parenting moment, or that moment where you had that hard conversation at work. Some of those smaller sufferings, they cause just as much heartache inside of us. And even those moments, we're to surrender them to Jesus and ask for His strength inside of us. And what often ends up happening is that those around us start to see that we're responding to hard situations in ways that we shouldn't if we live by the flesh. But people see something, they get curious, they wonder, why in the world would you come through that hard situation and respond like that? But I also want to offer you some encouragement, because when we go through hard situations, we do sometimes question where God is, what he's up to. We do shake our fist and get mad at God, and that is okay. He is big enough and God enough to handle all of our anger. But it's important that we realize that our strength always has to come back from this. And every time we start to question and doubt, that we pull ourselves back to the sovereignty of who God really is, that we get ourselves in the Word, that we ask our hard questions and we answer them through the context of Scripture and not through the lens of the world. When we continuously come back and feast on this book, we continue to fill our spirit. We continue to quench that thirst and that hunger inside of us with truth and with goodness. And so when we go through those hard moments, the only way holiness comes out of that and spills out of that is because we are putting holiness into ourselves during those hard moments. I wanted to read to you a little bit about Paul in 2 Corinthians, because Paul is someone who is not exempt from suffering. And he says, I have worked so hard, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, and been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with a rod. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from the rivers, in dangers of the bandits, in danger from my own countrymen, endangered from the Gentiles, endangered from the city, in danger in the country, in danger at the sea, and in danger from false brothers. I have labored and toiled. I have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I have faced daily the pressure of my own concern for all the churches. Who is weak, and I do not feel weak? Who is led into sin, and I do not inwardly burn? If I must boast, I will boast of all the things that show my weakness. I'm sure you can sit and make that laundry list of the hard things that you've endured in your life, those sufferings that you've taken on. But friend, let me remind you, if you boast of anything, boast of your weakness, that in these moments you wouldn't have lived or survived or continue to live and breathe today without the power of Jesus flooding through your moments. And so I pray as you go through hard moments now, and I don't want to downplay what your hard moment is, but I pray that as you go, you would continuously ask yourself, where is Jesus in this moment? That you would constantly take your heart and bring it back to the Scriptures. That you would continuously allow the breath of Jesus to be your breath day in and day out. I pray that out of his glorious riches, that you would know Jesus better, that those impurities would surface, that holiness would be what comes out of your hard moments.